When a disaster strikes, the immediate need is to ensure the safety and well being of affected individuals and communities. Effective coordination among government agencies, nonprofits, local organizations, and volunteers is essential to ensure a comprehensive and timely response to these needs. Today, we are excited to shine a spotlight on an organization that truly exemplifies the power of community and support in times of crisis. ToolBank Disaster Services is a nonprofit dedicated to equipping and empowering volunteers in community based organizations during natural disasters in the United States. They have a unique approach. They provide the literal tools needed to get the job done, from response and recovery tools to equipment and supplies. ToolBank ensures that those on the front lines of disaster relief have the resources they need when they need them the most. I have Patty Russart, the CEO, with me today, here to tell us about their mission, their impact, and the inspiring stories of how they bridge the gap between disaster and relief. Her mantra is where there is a will, there is a way. And that is how she approaches fundraising for the Tool Bank. Welcome to the podcast, Patty.
Thank you so very much for having me.
I'm very excited to talk about the tools. And I went to your website and I found these fantastic tools. And I found that every board member has a favorite tool. That's a wonderful way of connecting with the nonprofit. Oh,
Yes.
so, what exactly do you do, Patty? And what are the services and what is the mission of ToolBank Disaster Services?
Well, ToolBank Disaster Services falls under the bigger organization called ToolBank. And at ToolBank, at our national office, we actually replicate different tool banks across the United States. And those tool banks, which we call affiliate tool banks or community tool banks, have large warehouses that are full of different tools that they loan to nonprofit and charitable organizations in their communities. We don't lend to individuals because there is usually, almost always, an organization that's going to serve those individuals. So we're
Hmm.
not a tool lending library, we're a tool bank. There can be tools anywhere from a shovel to tables and chairs for events to larger equipment to do urban farming. It's immense. I think yesterday or the day before, we were up to almost 900 different tool types in our global inventory. So each tool bank just picks their own tools, and then member agencies get approved to borrow from the tool bank, and they pay a very small handling fee to borrow those tools for a week. Good example would be you could borrow a shovel from the tool bank for 45 cents for the week. Very, very, very good price.
Absolutely,
But
very
at the
reasonable.
national level, very reasonable. At the national level, we are trying to create more of these tool banks across the United States. So currently we have 8. We have Atlanta, which is the original, which is almost 30 years old, or over 30 years old, excuse me. And then we have Charlotte, we have Cincinnati, we have Baltimore, we have Richmond, we have Houston, we have Chicago, and we have Phoenix. And next month we'll be opening one in Birmingham. So very excited. And then at the national level, we do a disaster services program. So we operate disaster services. In that case, we have basically trailers and some warehouse space full of tools that are loaned during disaster times. At that point, we charge no handling fees. So we still loan out to charitable organizations doing good work after disasters and even for long term recovery, but we don't charge anything for that. We depend on our supporters and funders to help us get the job done. And so currently we are operating out of Panama City. We have major operations going in Tampa right now. We have operations in Puerto Rico. We have operations in New Orleans and Sacramento, and we're in the midst of opening some work up in Denver and Dallas. And those are where we're doing all of our disaster work at this time. And we're putting a small hub in, co-locating with our Chicago tool bank. We're going to have a hub in the Chicago area too to serve the Midwest.
That's wonderful. So I'm glad to see that the spread is quite diverse. Tell me, what were the origins? Who came up with this idea of having a tool bank?
So in 1991, a young gentleman who was just starting off as a lawyer bought a house in South West Atlanta. And he noticed that his neighbors, there were a lot of seniors in his neighborhood, and he noticed that their houses and their yards needed a lot of work. And he soon discovered a lot of them were struggling because some of the regentrification that was going on at the time was increasing their property taxes and their home ownership fees. And so he got some friends together and they started doing the upkeep on the houses and just helping neighbor. And pretty soon, people said, "Hey, I bet you could use these tools to do your good work." And they went from the back of his car into a storage shed. And then the city of Atlanta said, "Hey, we have this building. You want to put your tools in there?" And then in late 1990s, they changed the name to the Atlanta Community Tool Bank. And then in 2008, it Tool Bank USA, where I work today, came out of the Atlanta Tool Bank to replicate that model. And then in 2014, 2013, 2014, Tool Bank USA started the Disaster Services Program, taking the idea of the community tool bank on the road for disaster relief.
That's a wonderful idea. And the next question that comes to my mind is when you say disaster relief, right? There are different types of disasters. Now, planning for relief work uh, for the customized disaster, I'm sure is a challenge. So, do you have a think tank? Do you have a group of people who decide uh, quickly as to where and what tools should be going?
Yes, I have a great team of people. So we have a disaster services director. His name is Bill Hess, and he is in constant contact with the different emergency organizations in the area where the disaster is going to happen, or about to happen, or has happened. And they discuss what the need is going to be. Is it water damage? Is it wind damage? Is it fire damage? And just depending on what the need is, Bill then knows what needs to go on the trailer. And that also varies because we do disaster response, which means as soon as the disaster happens, we get in place so that those emergency responders can use the tools to do the necessary cleanup. But then a few years ago, we got into long-term recovery. Long-term recovery is different, and that takes different tools. That's rebuilding efforts. That's doing more than just cleanup. And in some cases, like in Panama City, we've had services in Panama City since 2019, since Hurricane Michael. And then when Hurricane Harvey hit in the Houston area, we were there for over 2 years. So it really just depends on whether I mean, in some cases, we went to Tennessee at the end of last year for some of the tornado damage, and we were there for about 2 months. So it really depends on how bad the disaster is and what the recovery and rebuilding efforts are going to be long term.
Absolutely. Um, we hope that there is no disaster, right? But when a disaster strikes, are all the tools in a state of operation? Do you need to maintain them at regular intervals?
We do. So we have different locations. So in Panama City, Puerto Rico, New Orleans, we actually have warehouse spaces, and that's where the tools go to stay and get cleaned up. We also have to brand them all, so they're painted with blue, which is our color, or with the word tool
Correct.
bank, so people remember, please bring
Yeah.
them back to us so we can get them back. And then after service, everything is evaluated. Does this tool need to be sharpened? Is it broken? Does the handle need to be replaced? Is it a generator? Does it need regular maintenance? And that's all taken care of through Bill and his team of people.
Providing tools is essential, right? But how do you know that? the people who are going to be using them, especially in high pressure disaster situations? Is there any training that you are offering, or is it only your team that is operating the tools?
We do not operate the tools, and I mean, we have, but very rarely. They go, the initial response was some of the, let's just use like chainsaws. Those don't just go out to anyone. So the other organizations that we work with often have experienced and trained volunteers that get that equipment. So we loan it out to those organizations knowing that they've had the training and that they're going to use those tools. We wouldn't really want to start handing things out where it might take some training and not know what the individual. Now, they will sign a waiver that says, I'm taking this tool, I know the risk, but still, we try to be mindful of those tools. And plus, it also helps us in the long run because we really want to maintain those tools. And if someone doesn't know how to operate a tool correctly,
Right.
that can really lead to some long-term issues of the cost of maintaining that particular tool.
True.
Let's take a break to understand what Chizuba is. Everyone at some point ponders on how this beautiful life can be made more meaningful. Maybe you're a leader trying to enhance your employees' experience at your organization. Or you already work for the community and seek volunteers with state of the art skills to strengthen your nonprofit. Whatever your situation, know that you can make a difference. Chizuba began with this very vision, a vision to facilitate every skill and every passion in the world in meeting a social need. Corporate volunteering has several benefits for both businesses and organizations. In parallel, experienced and enthusiastic volunteers join NGO workers, enabling them to serve the community more effectively. Chizuba offers everyone looking to add purpose and meaning to their lives a chance to connect or volunteer virtually with nonprofit organizations from over 100 countries around the world. Visit www.chizuba.net and explore opportunities to find meaning. Chizuba, your platform to do good. And now, back with our guest.
Many people are eager to volunteer, isn't it, at such times? And um,
Yeah.
how can anyone, any individual or any group, get involved with ToolBank? Is there any way that they can communicate and say that you can count on us in times of a disaster?
Yeah, what I would suggest for everyone to just check our website, which is www.toolbank.org. It will inform people where we're currently located and who to reach out to. There's a way to submit information for contact. If they are in need of help, they still can reach out to us because we will have suggestions. If we can't help you, we know what organization is doing the right work. So, say it's mucking and gutting your home. We don't do that, but we're going to know who's
Right.
doing it because they're probably using our tools and we can get you connected. So that's probably the best way. We're on Facebook, of course, social media. People can do shout outs on all of those. We have people who manage that to see what we need. And we like when people reach out and tell us what they need or, what is it they're looking for because it helps us decide what tools we need to get to the area or what kind of services are going to be needed. Um, we do ourselves take occasional volunteers at the national level. We like people to, during the time of a disaster, what we're looking for is people to come and get information from us and pass it out to the community. So sometimes the local nonprofit organizations may not be aware because we do loan to them as well, not just to the national organizations coming in and doing the recovery work. We like to work with the local officials and also local organizations because they're the ones that know their communities the best
Right.
and they know what
Right.
they need. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. So, Patty, could you just explain to us, to the layperson out here, how the process works from the moment a disaster strikes to the point where the tools are delivered to those who need them?
Sure, sure. So after Bill assesses whether we're going to deploy or not, and he makes the determination we have to go. He will decide how much equipment we need to send, how many tools. So we have trailers that are 18 foot, we have trailers that are 24 foot, and we have trailers that are 53 feet. And then Bill will determine what we're going to send. And then we have a wonderful partnership with UPS who pulls our trailers when we need. They get them to the disaster. And that usually takes about a 48, 72-hour turnaround. And as soon as we get our location of where we can put our trailer, we get into the area as quickly as we can. We usually partner with a local organization or maybe another nonprofit who's secured space. Often there's churches. The Home Depot will let us use parking lots so we can park our trailers there and then we can get the tools out. Then we work there and determine how many tools are going out every day and what the need is as to how long we're going to stay. And sometimes we reposition the trailers. We might go to a different location. And then probably after about 2 months, we determine, is this going to be a long-term area? Like, are we going to do
Hmm.
long-term
Hmm.
recovery here? And in that instance, then we start deploying different assets and we start looking for some potential warehouse space so that our trailers can be freed up to go to another location. We also, the smaller trailers, we do fill those full of tools, and sometimes organizations take the whole trailer full of tools with them, and they might keep them for several weeks to do work. And then they
Mhm.
bring it back, and then we clean everything up, get it ready to go and prep for the next disaster. So, and the cool thing that we do is we have a real-time inventory tool tracking system through Salesforce. We just launched our new one at the beginning of this year. And so all of our organizations actually go online and place their toolers. So they tell us what they need and they look at our list of tools, they submit it, and then Bill and our team can use that to determine what we need to get out and ready for those organizations to come. It's pretty phenomenal. And then it also helps us collect impact information so we can follow who's using the tools, what are they using them for, how many people are being served by it. So that helps our funders, determine that we're worthy of supporting and partnering with to get this job done.
Yeah, it's very impressive, actually. Having the inventory, having the team that's deployed, running that entire, executing that entire cleanup process, and making sure that everything is coming back to normal. Now, obviously, when a disaster is in the situation, people are, how do they deal with potential violent scenes, or do they also deal with a lot of destruction, obviously loss of life? Do you think they need some sort of counseling after that?
It's interesting you should say that because we had this discussion a little bit ago. We also, yes, they do see destruction. Generally, we're not the first in, so they aren't there for recovery of
Okay.
people,
Okay.
but they still see a lot, and they still see people who are suffering after. They see their homes been destroyed. What we do make sure is that the people that are in that area working do respite. So they can't stay there nonstop. They do have to leave the area and take a break. Very strong in that. We talked about long-term, like mental health care. I do know the American Red Cross has every 2 years, their volunteers have to go through some counseling. And it's just to make sure that they are getting out their grief as well, because we all experience that when we see a disaster.
Yes.
We all
Yes.
process it differently.
Absolutely. I mean, it can be disturbing to see something even on television, so seeing something live would be even more detrimental to mental health. Well, if you were to tell people out listening to this podcast about being prepared for a disaster, or what is the first thing that they should do when disaster strikes? I don't know whether this is the right platform to say this, but if you could share that piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, first of all, I would say number one is, I mean, I remember growing up and everybody go, oh, a storm's coming. Let's go out on the porch and watch it. Storms have become so severe today and so devastating that the first thing I would say is adhere to what your officials are saying, your local officials are saying. If they say evacuate, evacuate. Too many times I have seen and heard where people didn't heed the warnings and they got stuck. And there's two things that happen. First of all, you're putting the rescuer at risk to come and get you,
Right.
and you're risking your own life. So, my first thing is listen to what your authorities say. Take cover, be prepared. Even if you go, oh, it never hits us. One day it could. Just be prepared. Second, look at the list of things to be prepared for. What should you have? Where is it? Your flashlights, your water, where your medicines. Be prepared for what you need to take in case of an evacuation. What are the important papers? Have them in a location that you can grab something very quickly and get out. It can't be everything, but what is most important. So I would just say the prepared and then think about what happens after a disaster. My other big recommendation to everyone is people want to run in after disaster and help. Love it. Love that people want to volunteer and help. But I encourage individuals do not go on your own. Find an organization that is doing work in the area and they will help you get to a volunteer spot because authorities don't know who who's in the disaster area has been affected, who is just there, who's not a good actor, who's in there to do not good stuff. And it's also very dangerous. There's things you may not be prepared for. And when you talk about before, you may see things you don't want to see either, and you're not prepared for that. So I highly encourage people to volunteer, but please do it through an organization that's doing the work.
Right. That's a very useful tip, Patty. Thank you for sharing that. Uh, I would assume, you know, people would want to hold on to materialistic things and say, "I need this, I need that," but it might be too late before, getting to safety. Well, Patty, on a parting note, do you remember or can you share a particularly heartwarming, inspiring story of how ToolBank made a difference in a community or an individual's recovery journey?
I think my most personal experience and just thinking about what we do is after Hurricane Michael. And we were down in Panama City, and there was a block where one side of the block, one house was like completely destroyed. Several were really damaged. On the other side, the houses were okay. But this was a neighborhood block where all the neighbors knew each other. There was parents that lived on one side, two daughters that lived on the other. And our tools were being used to clean out one house and get it ready to be remodeled on the inside.
Hmm.
We were there. There was still a lot of damage, a lot of like stuff. And when we went to the house, they had actually moved all of their stuff out, put it in plastic containers, and it was under a tarp. And that was everything from their house was outside in their yard covered in a tarp so that their house could be fixed. And I remember meeting the homeowners and the lady was so wonderful and she's like, I can't thank you enough for all this work you're doing. And I'm like, I am so sorry for everything that's happened to you. And she was so, oh, I'm sorry about that. I think I just got cut out there for a minute.
No problem.
Sorry about that. Did I cut out? I think
That's
okay. Um, and I mean, I wanted to cry for her. She had a little girl. She was a teacher. She was so wonderful. And she was just so happy. She goes, I just love this neighborhood and I want to stay here. And you all are helping us get to stay together in this neighborhood. And she goes, we're going to stay. I'm going to go back to school and I'm going to teach. And she goes, and this is what it's about. And she was just so happy. It made me really proud that, I mean, the organization that was doing the work, our tools were there. I was like, now this is what it's about, really a community of people helping each other.
absolutely. You are doing wonderful work, and I'm sure it's very rewarding to see people benefiting from your services. I'm not wishing that you have multiple opportunities to serve people, but I am definitely wishing that more and more people will benefit from your services.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I really
In
appreciate the
conclusion,
opportunity to talk about
w-
this.
I love talking about this because, one assumes that when a disaster strikes, people are there to help, volunteer organizations are there, but you don't know what type of organizations, what tools are needed there. Tools are needed, volunteers are needed, equipment is needed, medical health is needed, but how does it all come together?
Yep.
And you have given us an idea today of how it happens.
Yeah.
So, when it comes to disaster survival, having the right tools at your disposal can mean the difference between vulnerability and survival. And I think today we face an increasingly unpredictable world, and the importance of being equipped with tools that enhance our chances of survival cannot be overstated.
Mhm.
So let's not forget the profound impact of human connections during the time of crisis. And our most valuable tools are often the ones that reside within us, the ability to collaborate, to comfort, and to persevere as a community. Armed with knowledge and equipped with tools, ToolBank is ready to face the unknown with courage, unity, and the unwavering belief that the human spirit can overcome even the most daunting of challenges. Thank you, Patty, for your time, and
Thank
may
you.
we all continue to journey forward prepared and empowered.